So my apologies in advance here, my video tonight is going to be quite quiet, and that is down to the fact that it is really late here and I don't want to wake anyone up tonight. So over the last couple of days I've been working on a project called p5UI, and what p5UI is basically just a library for the Canvas library called p5JS. And basically my goal with this project is to create a library for developers to use that they can create user interfaces within Canvas, which is quite exciting to me as a developer because I've been making web apps for years and mobile phone apps for years, and it's really quite amazing how much for granted you take how user interfaces work. You know, how everything's already provided for you. You have a baseline button, text box, drop down, you know, everything you could possibly ever need. But these things aren't provided for you within Canvas. Your only option a lot of the time is to just use a HTML5 overlay on top of the canvas, which for me, while is a good solution, I want a challenge. I want a project that will take me outside of my comfort zone a little bit, but will also pull from my areas of expertise. So this is why p5UI seemed like a really, really good step toward that outcome for me. So, okay, what will p5UI be moving forward? So basically, p5UI, I'm hoping to become a fully fledged UI library, right? I'm hoping to have things like buttons, window panels, tabbed panels, you know, things like checkboxes, toggle buttons, you know, fully functioning scroll bars, text boxes, all that good stuff. And maybe I might even expand into things like I might even build an additional charting library from it as well. Like I basically want it to be so extensive that you could potentially maybe even make a website from it. So that is my goal as it stands right now. That might shift moving forward with the project, I don't know. But for now, that is my goal, and that is what I'm going to work towards. And of course, one additional goal for this project will be to implement animations for all the UI elements. So when you press a button, you'll get like a nice little pop-in, pop-out animation and stuff like that. But I'm going to focus on functionality over form for now, because I actually want a functioning library before I start adding finesse. So what progress have I made so far in making this library? Well, so far I've been able to make 6 fully functioning, fully fledged UI elements, which I'm super excited about. So far we have fully functioning buttons, toggle buttons, progress bars, slider bars, and labels, and drop-down menus, all of which are fully functioning. If not a little buggy in places, I need to do a little bit of work, but so far it's taught me a lot and I've had a blast making it. I've really, really enjoyed putting them together, and it's kind of forced me to appreciate how much work goes into making user interfaces from scratch. So what have I learned from this project so far? And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from this project is just how complicated user interfaces are, right? We really take it for granted. You know, I'm a web developer and an app developer, right? I've worked with Android's layout engine. I've also worked with HTML5 web applications. You know, I'm used to having a beautiful markup and style sheet languages to sort of work with and make user interfaces with, you know, really quickly. You can throw things together instantly with those things. And the same goes for Android's layout engine as well. It's really easy. You've got your markup language and you put your colors in. You've got these beautiful pre-made UI elements like text boxes, drop-down menus, buttons, all in different styles. You've got a real variety of choice, and you've got like a whole plethora of different libraries to choose from for both web and mobile. You know, you've got Bootstrap on you know, web, and you've got things like the, you know, Material UI library that Google provides you to make beautiful UI with. Canvas has none of those things, and obviously doing p5UI has taught me how much work goes into making these individual UI elements, and it has been a real eye-opener. So the second thing I've learned from this project is that animations are hard as hell. Like, Jesus Christ, I never expected them to be so fucking complicated. But I'm not giving up. So essentially what happened when I tried to implement animations in my project was that I thought I would start simple, right? I thought, okay, I have a UI element for a button here. Wouldn't it be cool to sort of make it pop in and pop out when you press it? Seems simple enough. It turns out no. There's a lot of nuance that goes into those animations, and I definitely need to do some more research. So for now, as I've said earlier, I'm going to focus more on function rather than finesse. And once we've got like a fully fledged, fully functioning set of UI elements, then we'll focus on, more of the more refined UX aspects of the library. But for now, we want to focus on functionality and, a variety of different UI elements before we start looking at things like animation. And another thing that I learned from this as well is that masking is also something you don't really consider in user interfaces, right? Or clipping rather, which is where, whatever you render inside a particular UI element. So let's say you have a label inside like a button. You can be sure that no matter how long that label gets, it will never exceed the bounds of the button itself. And again, that isn't something that you think of when you're making a UI library from scratch. And p5.js doesn't have clipping inbuilt. So I've had to come up with a solution for myself which uses the Canvas's clipping functions, which I'm actually super excited about, and I'm going to show you that in the next video. But again, it's just those little things that you don't actually think about that are going on in the background of these pre-made UI infrastructures that are in our operating systems and web browsers. So what are my plans for the near future with this project? And I mean, we already have long-term goals. I want a fully fledged UI library that people can use to make beautiful UI. But at the same time, short-term goals right now are the more productive ones. So next up on the agenda is making things like the more complicated UI elements like text boxes and window panels. Those sound quite simple, but because p5.js doesn't have inbuilt clipping functions, I'm having to use Canvas's own clipping functions, and I don't know how that's going to affect how things draw. So we'll find out in the coming days. And I'm going to make a fully fledged text box from scratch. I'm going to make scrollable UI elements as well, because that's another thing that I've got to think about, like making drop-down lists that can scroll, because obviously you don't want massive drop-down lists that don't fit on the screen, So things like that for now, and then moving forward we'll look at refactoring the code, making it better practice, and making it themable as well. But those are all long-term goals, and at the moment I want to focus on the short-term goals and getting it as functional as humanly possible. So that brings us to the final question with this project, and that is, what do I plan on doing with this when I'm finished? And that is a good question. This project, as I said earlier, is just mainly to stretch my comfort zone a little bit, to sort of get better at graphics programming in general. So really I don't have any forward plans, to actually use this library. But one thing I thought would be quite cool would be to actually make like a web app with in Canvas with my p5UI library. So maybe like a Reddit client, or if we're going to be a bit more simple about it, maybe a Hacker News reader or something like that. So you never know, stay tuned for that, because I think it would be an excellent way of showcasing the limits of my project and what it is capable of. In the meantime, stay tuned, and we'll hopefully be recording some videos showing my journey along the way, making all this stuff, and the challenges that I encounter, of which I'm sure there will be many. But for now, thanks for watching, and see you soon.